Hi, it's Astrid, and in this video I was working on designing some outfits and a more concrete overall design for a character of mine that I'm trying to work on more, because even though his kind of concept, I guess, has been in my mind for a while, it was always changing, and only recently did I decide that, I really actually wanted to make a more solid design for him and maybe use him in an idea I had for a comic. So in order to sort of design an outfit for him, since even though I'd had sort of a story and a sort of aesthetic and concept for this character for a long time, whenever I tried to draw him recently, it always looked not right at all, and I wouldn't be able to come up with any sort of shirt for him. Every time I drew something, it just didn't look quite right. And so I thought, okay, this worked for another character I did, so I'll make a few bases of him, and then I'll sort of color clothes under that and just rough out some ideas for outfits. And I did that, and since I was having a ton of trouble coming up with an idea, I looked up some pictures of sort of steampunk jackets and tried to mess with that a little bit. The first try I did, it looks super just like the picture, and then I sort of adjusted a little down the line. And the final product, I'm still not completely happy with it. Like, I'm not completely satisfied with this just in general, because I don't know, I want his jacket to look a little different, but I'm glad that I finally got a finished piece with like a definite outfit, where I don't just like, the last drawing I did of him, I tried like 3 different times to give him a shirt. I didn't like any of them, so then I just didn't give him a shirt, and I just skipped that part altogether. And I was like, he really needs some sort of outfit if I want to keep drawing this character, which I do, because the sort of idea I have in my head I really like, but I don't have like a firm concept with like shapes and lines and colors. I just sort of have like an aesthetic and a feeling, and that can be hard to put on, well, not paper, but on a computer screen sometimes. But I finished the drawing, so I finally have like something to work from, I finally have something that when I start drawing this character and I think, okay, how does he look, I can actually pull something up and go, okay, here's my idea, and not just try to take something out of my head that isn't really a firm picture yet. So, glad I got it done, not completely satisfied with the final result. And I'm sure I'll keep working on him and trying to design a better overall look for him. Another problem I have with him is whenever I try to think of colors, I just end up using a lot of red. And I think it just makes his overall color scheme look way too dark, and it all looks the same, and certain features don't stand out as much, and so I really want to try to incorporate more colors and different colors. Another thing is I made his hair red in the final drawing, but normally I used to make his hair white and red, and I was like, I don't want to do that because it makes his hair look like a peppermint. I don't know if he'd want to have peppermint hair. So I started trying to make it red, but I think that makes it just way too much red, since I made his eyes red too, and I'm like, do I change his eyes, or do I change his hair back to being peppermint? I'm pretty sure I'm gonna give him peppermint hair again. I kinda liked it. I'm also not sure if I want to keep his eyes red, because I have a few old-ish drawings where his eyes are just red, and one of them, it looks pretty good, and it's one of my favorite drawings of him. But I don't know, red eyes feel not, they look, well, first of all, they look really natural, because very few people have red eyes, only like albinos, and the way I was drawing them, they don't look very expressive, but I feel like they're the only color that really fits, so then I also need to sort of put more colors in his outfit. I don't know, it just all comes out looking tinted red, and then it just looks dark and boring, and I need to change it. And then the last drawing I did for coming up with a concept for outfits, I didn't have any like other sort of outfit that I had in mind to design for him, so I just tried to give him sort of a cloak, and then I finished it, and I was like, oh, that looks like a cult robe, wow. I didn't like it very much, but it was there, and I was just like, well, I don't really have anything I need to put there, so I just left it there. Now, the first attempt I did at a finished piece, I didn't like at all, and I ended up completely scrapping. The way the head was shaped wasn't right, the eyeballs looked really weird in a way I didn't like. So I just left it, and then I started over the next day. I looked up I have a lot of trouble coming up with interesting poses. I don't have too much trouble drawing them, although in this one I messed it up a little and it looks a little weird in the finished product. Partly because I messed up the collar of his jacket, and partly because I think I made the arm too far back. But normally, I don't have too much trouble drawing poses overall. It's just coming up with them. I don't know. I blank out. So I used a website to generate photos of people in interesting poses, and I really liked it. And if anyone, I don't know, needs poses for something, I'll put a link to the website in the description because it was really useful. Something that sort of helped with the color scheme and making that more interesting was, after I was finished, I thought about it for a while, and I was like, oh wait, I know what it's missing, and it was adding sort of that, light in the shadows. I guess it's a backlight, but I don't do it so much to show that there's light behind them. I do it more just because I think it makes the drawing more pretty and interesting. And so I added that, and that made the entire drawing look a lot better. And it's my favorite part of a drawing digitally. It's so pretty, and it's such a bright, pretty effect. And I always like the drawing a lot better after I add it. Although I put it too much on his pants, it looks weird, because on his hair and a little bit on his jacket, it's coming pretty consistently from one side, but on his pants I just put it all around the outline. I didn't really notice how off it looked until after I was all done and was like editing, and I was like, oh, that looks not right. I realized that I hadn't actually talked about this character's personality or character or anything throughout this video, and that's partly because, and this is sort of one of the reasons I'm always really reluctant to try to write down my character's story or anything, is because I find it really hard to put what I have in my head into words sometimes. So he isn't evil or anything. I hope the cult-looking cloak didn't throw you off. But he's not evil, he's very nice. And I wanted him to be in the same story as a character I was working on earlier, a couple weeks ago. And she doesn't look exactly like she does in the video that I did a couple weeks ago, because I wanted her to be darker, but that's kind of irrelevant to this. But he's in the same story as her. And whenever I try to think about the story in any context other than just sort of their interactions, since that's almost always the point of view I'm thinking of it from, the biggest difference between them is that he's not particularly interested in expanding on his potential and inherent strengths in the way that she is, since she's just a little power hungry, and he's just kind of not out of really having different morals than her, but just because he doesn't feel any need to, and he doesn't think of himself as weak, but he doesn't really seek any power in himself, and so he doesn't really care. But her, she's just really driven. And while he gets a lot more drive later in the story, I want them to have really contrasting views on it, I guess, and feelings toward it. I'm really not doing a good job of explaining, but I'll wrap it up in terms that I can explain more easily. But they live in a world where there's lots of magic, and it's a fantasy world, because that is my favorite genre. He's a vampire, she's a princess, people can use magic fairly easily in this world. There's a lot of different magical animals and places, and, yeah. What I just said does such a great job of distinguishing it as something memorable. Wow. I have some stuff written down. It's in a notebook. It's on the mess on my shelf somewhere. I have ideas for it. It's just I don't write them down when I'm thinking about them, and I really should. Or at the very least, I should, do a recording of myself that I don't post so that I can write it down later. That's actually a really good idea. I should do that. And then maybe I could post it when I've got a better overall concept for the story. I mean, it's all in my head, I just can't get it out with words or on paper. I love the idea in my head, I love thinking about it all the time. I like it. I mean, I'm sure it's not a great idea. It's a good idea to me. Well, if you listened to me ramble for this long, I am impressed and grateful. Unless something horrible happens, I will post another video next week. Thank you, goodbye.